COC, how are you today? You doing okay today? Fantastic. That was some pretty awesome worship, and God is doing some pretty amazing things, and I think He's still going to do something amazing through somebody today at this worship service. We are continuing on in a series that we started a few weeks ago called Split on the life of David. Now, we choose this particular character because I think he has so much in common with so many of us, in which there's a part of us that wants to just be absolutely, unabashedly in love and pursuing Jesus with all that we have. And then there's a part of us that just kind of is like, where did that person come from, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're sold out, but then before you even know it and blink, you're selling out. And that's what we're talking about. We kind of came up with a little catchphrase in which all of us, I believe, if you're a follower of Jesus, suffer from split Christian personality disorder, SCPD. And we have this ongoing battle that's going on in our lives. So we're gonna move forward today. But before we do, if you're new to church or you're new to this series, let me just give you a little background, because believe it or not, not everybody has ever heard about David before. And King David became one of the most, became the most famous king of Israel. But we know some bits and pieces about David, and we know primarily, if you know anything about it, you know the two famous stories about David, which is David and yeah, and then the other story where that's the story where David was on, and there, like I said, David was on, and when he was on, and then when he was off big time. He suffered from SCPD. So the first one was David and Goliath, and the second one that probably you're familiar with or have heard is David and... See, look at you guys. You're already... Why am I even up here teaching? You guys get this. So here's what I want to do, though, is I want to move into kind of one of David's most famous moments today. But before we do that, let me just ask you a question. If you're a note taker, you can write this down. You can follow along inside your Bible apps as well, where most of the notes and Bible verses are in there. But I want to ask you a question that I want you to think about throughout the entirety of this message, and I want you to write it down in some way, shape, or form. But the question kind of goes in response to this. And now today we're talking about giants, okay? So I want you to think about that giant that is in your life, that fear, that obstacle, that barrier, that thing that keeps taunting you day after day after day. Some days you get a little bit of victory, but most of the days you walk away defeated. It beats you again, okay? And I want you to think about it this way, and this is the question I want you to write down. I want you to ask this. What if you stopped defending your fear and you started defending your faith? What might happen if you just determine in your brain, I am not going to surrender to my giant today, and I'm going to activate my faith and begin defending it in such a way that it puts it into power? What if I today made a decision, I'm going to stop surrendering to that giant or those giants in my life, and I'm going to start defending my faith? What kind of perspective might that take in your life? And that's what we want to talk about today. So that question in mind, I want to look a little bit closer at whatever giant it is that you're facing. Now, the reality is every single one of us have something in our life that is continually intimidating us. There is no doubt. And it's keeping you from activating your faith like never before. The fears that we face every day. And we're going to look at the most famous story probably about David when he was on his game like never before. Now, if you got your Bibles, you can turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17, because let me set the scene so you understand what's happening here and get the background. We have You don't have to put that up just yet. Hold on. Upstairs. Slow down, Gina. All right. I see you. All right. So anyway, she's gonna apologize super time after church because she always gets nervous. I'm pushing the button. But let me give you a little bit of a background of what's happening. Okay. We have a really big battle that is impending in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And just picture it in your mind's eye. On one side of the mountain, you have the Philistine army, which is the arch enemy of the Israelites. And then on the other side of the mountain, you have the Israelite army. And there is a big, big battle that's about to ensue. Now, I've told you that David eventually becomes king, but he's not king yet. He's still a shepherd boy, okay? And basically at this point in time, King Saul is still the king of the Israelites. And he is the leader of the Israelite army. There is a massive, massive battle that is about to ensue. And here's the craziest thing, though. There's one thing different about this particular battle that we're going to highlight than most battles between the Israelites and the Philistines. And here's the problem. The Philistines, throughout the years, have had this great warrior that has risen up through the military ranks, and he's this champion military strategist, and he's known in our Bibles as a giant from Gath. And his name is Goliath. His name is Goliath. Okay, so we know what's going on. Now, what you might not understand is maybe if you've seen the movie Troy, you've got this, but a lot of times back in that day and age, instead of just having one massive war with so many deaths that took place, a lot of times what would happen is one army would say to the other army's leader, here, listen, we don't need all this bloodshed and death at the end. We'll figure this out, but we will choose one of our men, usually our greatest warrior. You choose your greatest warrior, and let's go mano a mano on the battlefield. Like a modern-day Ultimate Fighter challenge. And the winner will surrender their armies and control to the victor. So this is very traditional in that day and age and common in war. So with that in mind, let's pick it up in 1 Samuel chapter 17. The Philistines now mustered their army for battle and camped between Soko and Judah and Azekah and Ephes-Dammim. Say that 10 times real fast. Saul, he's still the king and the leader of Israel, countered by gathering his troops near the valley of Elah. So the Philistines and the Israelites faced each other on opposite sides of the hills, with a valley between them. Again, think Braveheart. All right, think Gladiator. We got a massive war that is impending. You got the drums, boom, boom, boom. You know, every day it's coming up. And then all of a sudden, something really unusual, but not that unusual in that time of life, then this is what happens. Then Goliath, a Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks to face the forces of Israel. He was a giant of a man, measuring over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet and a coat of mail. What is a coat of mail? I've always wondered, what is a coat of mail? There we go. I know what it is. I'm just joking. It's a bad one. I'll pick it up later, okay? That weighed 125 pounds. And then he wore bronze leggings. He slung a bronze javelin over his back. And the shaft of the spear was as heavy and thick as a weaver's beam, tipped with an iron spearhead that weighed 15 pounds. An armor bearer walked ahead of him carrying a huge shield. Physically, visually intimidating. And then he came out and he shouted across to the Israelites, "Do you need a whole army to settle this? Choose someone to fight for you, and I will represent the Philistines. We will settle this dispute in single combat. If your man is able to kill me, then we will be your slaves, but if I kill him, you will be our slaves." And then he mocks them. "I defy the armies of Israel. Send me a man who will fight with me." Oh no, he didn't in this moment. It's one of those kind of things like, are you kidding me? That did not just happen. He did not come out there and do that. The Israelites had been hearing about this guy, and then all of a sudden they visually get to see, oh my gosh, he is real. The rumors are true. He's everything more that people have said. This dude is now out in front of us, challenging us to go man to man. Now, immediately, we're still thinking, this is God's people, though, right? Come on. This is Israel. God fights on their behalf. They will not back down, which is sometimes what we often think as Christians. As a Christian, you will not back down, will you, baby? You got God on your side. Amen. So you're kind of like Israel in this because they back down. Just like we often back down with the giants that we face in our life. Be careful, folks. You seriously need to be really careful, because you're going to see here in a minute that Israel does what you and I do a lot and often in our lives when it comes to the giants in our lives. Now, just imagine for a minute that there's this huge, foul-mouthed kind of freak of nature. Right? A very real, if you want to equate it to your life, a very real and serious giant that you are facing on a daily basis. Fear, hurt, habit, hang up. It's coming at you. And that giant doesn't take too kindly to you, your nation, and more importantly to your God. Because whatever it is, that giant in your life, it could care less about God. That's right. Understand that. He doesn't take too kindly to you. He's cursing you. He's making a fool of you. He's mocking you. And in essence, he's given the finger to God at you. And every time that you submit to that giant in your life, he's saying, more glory to me, not to God. Screw you and screw your God. That's what your giant is. And then get this to make matters worse. Ready? In verse 16 tells us that this is happening every day for 40 days, which tells me that your fears and your giants that you and I face on a daily basis, they're addictive. They're addictive. Now let's break this guy down real quick as fast as we can this morning, because he is a beast and I need to have a little volunteer and help. I need somebody really manly, kind of ugly. John, you're perfect. Come on up, buddy. Come on up, John. Fast now. We ain't got much time. We got to do this thing in like 3 minutes. All right? Got to find someone a little shady. This is the guy right here, okay? John, I want you to climb up this ladder, okay? Put your head through that hole right there, all right? Go up until I tell you to stop. You ain't even close to being there, right? Go up until I tell you to stop. One more. You got space. I got you, bro. Just don't move, okay? Goliath! The Bible tells us, all right, that Goliath's height is around 6 cubits. So Bible scholars are very modest in their measurements of Goliath, which means that Goliath was very easily well over 9.5 feet tall. Probably at the shortest, 9.5 to 10 feet. All right? And then what's next is he had a bronze helmet. All right, this is the best that we could do on this one. All right, buddy? All right, so he had a bronze helmet, okay? That weighed about 15 pounds. That don't weigh 15 pounds, but it is black because it's the Steelers, John, for you, buddy, right? A black helmet for Steelers for you, okay?
Just don't take it off and hit me with it.
All right, yeah, oh yeah, that could be dangerous. He's got the coat of mail, which is the breastplate. It weighs around 125 pounds. That's a junior hire. So I'm going to crawl up because I'm about that weight, and I'm going to crawl on his back. No, I'm just joking. I would not do that. All right? He also, then, we're going to do this the best that we can. I want this to kind of go, lift that sheet up, and just kind of go through and hold that thing kind of even, okay? A little bit up, a little bit up. Okay, so this is a wingspan. I'm doing the best I can. Work with me, okay? That is the wingspan of Goliath, okay? Which is approximately 8 to 10 feet. He had a sword which was about, I'm gonna just put that right here so everybody can see. But the sword, just so you understand it visually, okay? The sword was anywhere from 5 to 6 feet in length. So I'm 5'10", and you can see that it's got me. So the sword is right here, okay? So that's about 5 to 6 feet. And then we have an iron-tipped spear. All right, you can hold that one. That is another 8 to 10 feet that he carried. And get this, okay, that he had on top of that the size of a bowling ball right here, 15 pounds. John, can you try to balance that on top? I'm just joking. You don't have to do that. I want you just to get the idea. This is on top of his spear. He has also, right, the 5 to 6 foot knife or sword that he has. And then as if that's not enough, right, he's got an armor bearer who's out in front of him carrying his shield to I don't know what, protect that, right? Total armor weight of approximately, we're talking 200 plus pounds of just armor weight. And that would not have even included how much Goliath himself possibly weighed. We're talking probably well over 500 to 600 pounds. All right? Now, this is what I want you to understand. I want you to think about this as the Israelites are on one side. How in the world would you like to face that man on man? He's mocking you. He's cursing you. He's slamming your God. He wants to annihilate you and crush you. This is what Goliath basically looked like. Now, here's my point. This is my point, especially if you're David. My point is this. I get it today. I really do. Your giant is really intimidating. Your giant is massive. And every day that you wake up and look at your giant, this is what you see. So it's no doubt that so many times you surrender to your fear as opposed to defending your faith. Especially if this is what you're looking like. Especially if there's more than one giant in your life. Would you give John a round of applause real quick? I'm going to help you down, brother. Thank you, big boy. Come on down, man. Want your sword?
Anything else, my guy?
You're good. So Saul defines what you just saw very accurately. In response to this natural phenomenon that we just kind of witnessed and did our best to makeshift reincarnate, it says this, that when Saul and the Israelites heard this, heard Goliath mocking, they were terrified and deeply shaken. You think? Now, most likely, as I already mentioned, Goliath's reputation had preceded him into this battle. And the Israelites were already hearing stories about Goliath and what he's already done to men in battle. And they're freaked out, literally freaked out, at what they see and what they hear. And here's what's even worse. Their leader, their so-called King Saul, comes to his army and he gathers them together. And he says something like this: if any of you guys are willing to take a chance and give that guy a shot and get lucky enough to come back in one piece, here's what I'll do for you. I will give you my daughter's hand in marriage. and you can then live in the palace, and you will become of royal blood from this day forward. Now, for a lot of men that were in the Israelite army, this would not have sounded like a bad offer. It is a way out for them. And a lot of times you get the same thing, like if you do this, this is what you'll get if you get this happening, right? Like that affair that's going on. You know what I'm saying? Just the visual thing. And you're like, you're going to get sex out of it, right? But then you're going to be completely defeated in the end. But nobody took up King Saul on this offer, because Goliath apparently was a bad dude, and nobody took him up on this offer. But then check this out. This is where the story changes, and I love these two words in 1 Samuel chapter 17:12. It says, "Now David." And my memory goes back to my old days in vacation Bible school and Sunday school, and I started thinking, only a boy named David, only a little sling, right? I mean, that's where my brain goes. Some of you are like, you're weird. But it does to me. And it's like the story changes. We just read about how massive this Goliath was, this giant. But then the story changes. And it says, now David. Here comes David, the little shepherd boy. And let's read this part of the story. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 17 through 27. One day, Jesse said to David, take this half bushel of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread to your brothers, and give these 10 cuts of cheese to their captain. See how your brothers are getting along, and bring me back a letter from them. David's brothers were with Saul and the Israelite army at the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines, or so they thought. There was no fighting going on. So David left the sheep and another shepherd and set out early the next morning with gifts. He arrived at the outskirts of camp just as the Israelite army was leaving the battlefield, and shouts and battle cries. And here comes David, the hero of our story, bringing a sack lunch to his brothers. Not quite how you naturally envision this story, because we know the end of it, right? Not quite like you're thinking about the little dude that's about ready to bring the smackdown on the big Goliath. I mean, when I'm sitting here, I'm thinking things like Brad Pitt from Troy. You know, the ruddy little handsome boy shows up. What's going on, guys? You know what I'm saying? What's happening here on the battlefield? This is what you think about naturally, right? And David shows up, and he's nothing more than a Domino's delivery dude. He's bringing pizza. Keep reading. Soon the Israelite and Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army. And David left his things with the keeper of the supplies, and he hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. Now, David understands the art of war, and he understands that a battle is somewhat impending. It's drawing near, and he wants to get a better look. Dude's a teenage boy. I want to see the R-rated movie. That's what he is in this moment, right? And as he was talking with them, get this, he sees Goliath, the champion from Gath, come out from the Philistine ranks, shouting his challenge, his daily challenge to the army of Israel. And in this moment, you got to get this story. The wrong man hears the same taunting that the others have just been hearing for 40 days. The wrong man shows up. Have you ever just stopped and thought during stories, any story for that matter, but I do often in the Bible, and just think, the timing is perfect. What if David had shown up 15 minutes earlier and missed the taunting, dropped off the sack lunch and took off? What if he showed up 15 minutes later? The timing is perfect. Let's keep reading. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they once again began to run away in fright, saying, have you seen the giant? The men are asking. He comes out each day to challenge Israel. And have you heard about the huge reward the king has offered to anyone who kills him? The king will give him one of his daughters for a wife, and his whole family will be exempted from paying taxes. David talked to some others standing there to verify the report. I love this. Have you seen the giant? Have you heard what the king is offering? He's offering his daughter's hand in marriage as they're running away. And David said, come again? What's the king offering right now? Come again? David's like, what will a man get for killing the Philistine and putting an end to this abuse of Israel? I love this. Just want to make sure I know what the reward is. And then David says something powerful. Who is this pagan Philistine anyway that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God? In short, who is this guy? And somebody please tell me why in the world is he allowed day after day after day, you say for 40 days, to come out here and mock our living God? Don't miss this, friends, because for the first time in apparently 40 days, this is the right perspective about facing giants. For the first time, there appears the right perspective amidst the wrong crowd. You see, folks, what you don't or may not understand, I hope we did a good enough job in week 1 to share with you. But this is what's going on in David's brain. David had made up his mind a long time ago, before he even stepped foot on this battlefield, before he even faced the problem, before he even stood in front of his giant. And I want you to connect the dots here and put yourself in this position with whatever giant you are facing in your life. Before he ever faced the giant, David had determined in everything in his life, he was going to do one thing. I'm going to serve God. He'd already determined, no matter what it is I'm facing, no matter how overwhelming it is, no matter how fearful, nasty it is, I've already determined and made up my mind I'm going to serve God no matter what. You got to get this. This is where we fall so much to our giants. Listen, friends, sometime in your life, you need to determine that you're going to stop living your life according to the question, and you're going to start living your life according to the answer. Let me explain what that means. For a teenager that's out there and is going to actually get this pressure at some point in time, if they haven't already, the answer is this: I am going to serve God with my body no matter what. The question is, do you want to have sex with me tonight? You're living your life based on the answer, not the question, which is so intriguing, so enticing. One woman of God out there, the answer is, I am going to serve God no matter what. So could you tell me what you want me to put on social media or Facebook and gossip about that person? Man of God, I am going to serve God no matter what. So could you tell me again why I need to look at that website for self-gratification? Starting to hit some nerves on some giants now, aren't we? We looked at Goliath, let's look at David. Maybe just surpassing 5 foot. Weighing in at a big and hearty 110 to 125 pounds. Buck naked, soaking wet. Covered head to toe with sheepskin. No helmet, no breastplate, no leggings, no javelin, no spear, no shield, no sword. Only carrying a sling and a staff. Stay still. A sling and a staff, but apparently a very strong confidence in his God. A very big God. Now let me stop for a second here and ask you something else today. How are you viewing your so-called impossibilities? Because some of us are already pushing back. You say, you don't understand. I'm addicted to this. I can't get off of this, or whatever it is in our life. How are you viewing your fears, your obstacles, your challenges, your hurdles, your giants in life? Let me remind you before you answer that question today, because you're already defeated, because you're not defending your faith, you're surrendering to your fear. Let me give you some insight about the God that we serve. The God that we serve is in the business of turning impossible things into possible. And if you don't believe that, then there's really not going to be much hope for you to defeat your giants. Back to our story at Smackdown time. This is awesome. 1 Samuel 17, 31 through 51. Then David's question was reported to King Saul. Got back to him, and the king sent for him. Now he's got an audience with the king. And this is what he says. I love it. Little teenage boy, don't worry about a thing, king. I love this. It's like, I got this, bro. We can handle this. No worries. He's got an audience with the king, and he says, I'll go fight the Philistine. Don't be ridiculous, Saul said. There's no way you can go out against the Philistine. You're only a boy, and he's been in the army since he was a boy. But David persisted. Great comeback, David. I've been taking care of my father's sheep. What's up, bro? Are you, seriously, you get an audience with the king, and you're like, don't worry about this, bro. I've been taking care of my father's sheep. That's what you got? That's the best you got, right? But then he goes on with a little bit more convincing. He says, when a lion or bear comes and steals a lamb from my flock, I go after it with a club and take the lamb from its mouth. The animal turns on me. I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. That's apparently a bad shepherd boy right there. If I'm serious. I'm serious. And he says, I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do this to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who saved me from the claws of the lion and the bear will save me from this Philistine. So Saul finally consents. What an idiot leader to say, okay, 12, 13-year-old boy, go get him. You know what I'm saying? Listens to this and is like, all right, you convinced me, let's go. And he's probably thinking, because ain't nobody else going to do it, right? All right, he said, go ahead, and may the Lord be with you. In essence, he patted him on the butt. Go get him, tiger. He's dead. So Saul says to David, come look at my armor, a bronze helmet, a coat of mail. David put it on, strapped the sword over it, took a step or two to see what it was like, for he had never worn such things before. And he says, I can't go in these. I'm not used to them. So he took them off again. This is huge. This is really a huge point that a lot of times we just fly right over. In essence, David said this, before I go face my giant, I need to do it the way that God has created me. This is not me. I'm not Pastor Josh, and I can't defeat my giant the way that he might be able to defeat my giant. I need to go into battle confident in who God made me, because he's already made me with enough confidence and enough strength to overcome any giant if he's with me. He's going to go into battle with what's familiar with him. So here's what he does. He goes down to the brook and he picks up 5 smooth stones from a stream, puts them in a shepherd's bag. Then, armed only with a shepherd's staff and sling, he starts across to fight Goliath. Goliath walks out towards David with his shield bearer ahead of him, like he needs a shield bearer, sneering in contempt at the ruddy-faced boy, and he says, am I a dog? You got to say it like that, okay, because am I a dog that you come at me with a stick? And he cursed David by the names of his gods. Come over here, and I will give your flesh to the birds and wild animals. Goliath is embarrassed. He feels as if the Israelite army is mocking him, and this ticks him off. He's like, you got to be kidding me, right? And he's saying this. He says, come over here. I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals. And David ain't going to back down, and he yells back something like this. Oh, yeah? Well, my daddy's bigger than your daddy. In essence, that's what he said. That's PJA phrase right there. He says, you come at me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come at you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. Now this part just rocks because I love it, man. Dude has got a strong confidence in his God. He says, today, the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you, and just to prove my point, I'm going to cut your head off too. You got to be kidding me. And then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And everyone will know that the Lord does not need weapons to rescue his people. It is his battle, not ours. Huge lesson there for some of us that are facing giants that think it's your battle. If Jesus is in you, it's not just your battle. It's his battle too. As Goliath moved closer to attack, get these words, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag, taking out a stone, he hurled it from his sling to hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in. The Goliath stumbled and fell face down forward. So David triumphed over the Philistine giant with only a stone and a sling, and it's kind of missing here, and a really big God. And since he had no sword, he runs over and he takes Goliath's sword from its sheath, which took about 25 minutes because it weighed more than him. And David used this to kill the giant and cut off his head. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they turned around and ran. Would this not make an incredible motion picture? Can you just see David in slow motion? I can just see this, man. This would be so cool. I got a cramp. I got 8 minutes. This ain't gonna happen, so just stick with me. You want this same perspective with your giants? Know this first, okay? It's always better to be a follower who sometimes fails than a follower who fails to follow. Know this first. Here's the first thing. Remember, obedience is better than sacrifice. Ready? The first thing, stay faithful in the small things. Stay faithful in the small things. Philippians 4:13, for I can do all things through who? Christ. I can beat all my giants, defeat all my giants, slay all my giants through who? Christ, who strengthens me. David was just a shepherd though, Josh. He was a weenie. What you may not know is shepherds need protecting. I was 6 years old, had 2 twin brothers on my grandpa's Iowa farm, and we got our butts blistered so many times for chasing sheep. And my grandpa would tan our hides. And one day we got enough confidence, like, why you keep spanking us when we're chasing the sheep? It's fun. He said, because sheep are dumb. You start the sheep running, they're so dumb that they won't stop running, and their brains will burst. Sheep need protecting. You already saw what David did, right? He defended dumb, stupid sheep from what? From bears, lions. What's your point? My point is this, man. You know what the Bible calls you and me? Sheep. And you trying to beat your lions and tigers and bears by yourself. Number 2, draw strength from past victories. I love this personally. David says, the Lord who saved me from the claws of lion and bear will save me from this Philistine. In essence, David said, you get this, Saul? It's not me here. It's going to be about God, right? In the Old Testament, there are stories that tell of this, but whenever Israel, in all of their years of wandering and migrating from place to place, whenever they would see a huge victory that only came at the hands of God, they would build kind of this monument. In essence, a pile of rocks. Why would they do that, Josh? Because as generations passed down and you were maybe traveling from one place to the next, it served as a huge reminder for when your 2-year-old, which wasn't even alive when this happened, said, Daddy, what's the pile of rocks for? You would say, that's when God showed up and showed off, son. Let me tell you the story about that. If it weren't for God showing up and showing off in this point in time in my life, then I would have been defeated. But God showed up and showed off for the nation of Israel. And I love this because David does this. He goes back to a pile of rocks, and he goes back and he says, there's moments where God had to show up and show off and use me. And I'm guaranteeing you, some of you are out there and you've got a pile of rocks, but you're so defeated by your giant, you're forgetting about those past victories. Some of us are out there and saying, well, I just gave my life to Jesus 6 weeks ago. I can't think of a bigger pile of rocks. You surrendered your life to his life. He drew strength from past victories. You can do all things through who? Christ who strengthens you. Number 3, go into battle with confidence. With confidence. He picked up, I can't do this myself. I need to go in with what's familiar with me. And he said he picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream and he put them in his shepherd's bag. 5 smooth stones and he put them in his shepherd's bag, right? And then then armed only with the shepherd's staff and sling, he goes out across to fight Goliath. 5 stones. 5 stones is all that he had. And he proceeded into battle with 5 stones. This is all he's got. We just defined and descriptively showed you what Goliath looked like. Now again, my brain wonders, and like, why 5? Not every number has to be a reason, but I'm wondering, why didn't he just say he went out and picked up 1 stone? Did he doubt himself a little bit, like his aim? You know what I'm saying? Why 5 stones? I've wondered this at times. But if you flip ahead at some point in time and read in 2 Samuel, which is interesting, in 2 Samuel chapter 21, after this battle, it says this, these 4, what 4? Were descendants of Rapha and Gath, and they fell at the hands of who? David and his men. The writer of 2 Samuel tells us in this battle about 4 giants that also fell. Many Bible scholars believe that those 4 giants were actually, get this, the sons of Goliath. Now, I'm just a simple mind. It don't take much to convince me on certain things, and just, I like that. This suggests the reason why maybe David only picked up 5 stones instead of just 1, because he wasn't afraid of missing him. He was saying this, after I beat this Goliath, there's going to be more giants down the road, and I'm going to take care of them as well. I am going to go into battle prepared. So many of us are being defeated every day because you are lacking preparation. What are your, maybe your rock is to finally surrender your life to Jesus Christ. Like, stop doing it your way. Maybe your rock is to completely, and continually forgive that someone that you're just holding on to bitterness about. Maybe your rock is I need to stop gossiping because it's addictive. It has control of me and I can't stop it. It's a giant that I cower to and I surrender to daily instead of defending my faith. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's a rock. Maybe it's a rock that's basically you need to surrender your addiction to whatever it is. Pornography, right? Alcohol, drugs. Maybe it's that rock. Maybe it's the rock that you need to pick up to start fighting and control your temper and control and curb that habit that's in your life. I don't know what your rock is. Fill in the blank. What is the rock that you need to pick up and start going into battle prepared with? Let me give you real quick on this side, sub points for this particular idea about going into battle prepared. This is what I've found in ministry. The 3 reasons that I think Christians don't do what they know they should do when facing their giants. The first one is this. I've often heard this. I'll pray about it. But yet you're still an addict to pornography. I'll pray about it. I'll pray about leaving that woman in the extramarital affair. But yet you're still in that relationship. I'll pray about quitting the alcohol, quitting the drugs. I'll pray about it. Now, guys, listen, don't hear what I'm not saying. I am a massive believer in the power of prayer. I believe firsthand. But here's what I've come to the conclusion of with many people in church today that say, I'll pray about it. Many, many, many people use prayer for an excuse for inactivity. We're too afraid to act, so we opt for the waiting on God as a crutch. We'd rather, ready, get this, we'd rather pray than obey. What if David had just prayed that God would get rid of Goliath? I doubt we'd be talking about him today. Number two, here's another reason Christians don't do what they know they should do. Disobedience. We kind of hammered this the last few weeks, haven't we? Disobedience. Let me ask you something in response to this. If you're wondering why you're not able to take that next step and overcome and face that giant, let me ask you this. Why would God trust you with what's next if you're not even obedient with what's now? Listen, friends, I don't know how else to say this except just straightforward. It's impossible to experience spiritual maturity while hanging on to some area of disobedience in your life. Impossible. Number three, procrastination. Oh, I'm good at this one. Procrastination is assassination on the amazing future that God has planned for you. Just know that. David didn't procrastinate. David didn't say, hey, let's pray about this. Let's form a discussion group. Let's talk about the pros and the cons on this thing. David simply saw the step that God had put out in front of him, and he embraced the opportunity. Talk about a next step. Verse 48, as Goliath moved closer to attack, David ran out. I love this. David didn't stay back, test the wind, get ready. David ran out to meet him. When is the last time that you actually ran out to meet your giant as opposed to turning tail and running away from him? One of the biggest barriers for Christians, I've often shared, in running towards your giant is Mondays. Mondays. It's the biggest obstacle for many of us. It's going to be tomorrow for you. So you want to know how best to go into battle with confidence tomorrow? Ephesians chapter 6 is probably the best piece of advice. Use every piece of God's armor to resist the enemy in the time of evil so that after the battle, you'll still be standing firm. The problem is there's so many Christians and believers today that are half naked spiritually, if not fully buck naked. You're going into battle to face your giant that we just saw buck naked. You're not preparing yourself. Here's the last one. Not of the subpoints, but of the last one. Right perspective. Never lose sight of the big picture. Never lose sight of the big picture. David said, you come at me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come at you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you and cut off your head. And then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and the wild animals. And the whole world will know there is a God in Israel. And everyone will know that the Lord does not need weapons to rescue his people. It's his battle, not ours. The Lord will give you to us. Romans 8, chapter 8, verse 31 is probably the most powerful verse that I don't know why we keep cowering to our giants in our lives when it says this. What can we say about such wonderful things as these? If God is for us, who can be against us? Amen. Maybe it's time that you stop surrendering to your fear and you start defending your faith. I really do believe that many of us lose the battle daily against our Goliaths, against our giants, because, ready? Get this and let it sink in as you leave. You're seeking the victory for you. You're seeking the victory for you, instead of realizing the victory really isn't and doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God's. And once you get that right perspective, I guarantee you will face your giants differently. Will you stand to your feet with your heads bowed and eyes closed? Friends, as long as you keep seeing yourself as the victim in your problems, you'll never be able to step into the victories that God promises. Now, I do not want to be unsympathetic, unempathetic, lacking any type of mercy or sensitivity. I know what it's like to face a giant on a daily basis, a giant that is overwhelming, it's intimidating, and it is relentless, and it is not cowarding. You feel trapped, you feel helpless. You come to church to get a little bit of fuel, but it doesn't last very long because it can't stop Monday from coming. I need to tell you something today, friends. What you are hearing today will not help you tomorrow if you continually remain disobedient and keep surrendering to the giant that's standing in front of you. Your giant's not easy. Taking a step of faith towards God is not easy. It never will be. But I'll tell you this. Surrendering is worth it. Surrendering may mean you lose something. You lose something valuable to you, something precious to you. But surrendering is worth it. Because you're going to face more giants. But what you're going to gain from that victory is faith. More faith in a God that has the ability to slay any giant that is in front of you. With your heads bowed and eyes closed, I want to pray for you. And I just want to encourage you today. Maybe somebody's willing to come forward and say, alcohol has a grip on me and I can't let it go. Drugs have a grip on me and I can't let it go. I'm having an affair and I can't let it go. I'm in an abusive relationship and I'm scared to death and I don't know what I need to do. Stop being silent. Tell somebody. You're facing a giant and you're scared to death. Whatever it is, today, would you come down to the brook? Would you come down to the stream that's here at the front and pick up a stone and start building your pile of rocks? Jesus, would you move in someone's life today? I don't know who it is that you have spoken to, but I feel and have felt for a few months that a lot of people in our church are reluctant and fearful to just surrender. Doesn't promise or guarantee that things will go away, but how we view them changes. And help us, God, shift from realizing that it's not just us fighting our giant for our personal victory. We're going to face our fear. We're going to defend our faith. And we're going to fight so you can win, God. Yes. So you can win. And we don't have to worry about this anymore. In the next battle, we draw from that pile of rocks and we go in even more confidently because another one's going to come. Because every battle and every Goliath that I face, praise Jesus, you get more glory. You get more glory. Would you move in someone's life today? We praise you in your Son's precious and holy name. Amen.